I am pleased to announce today that New Zealand's retail banks have agreed to provide a mortgage repayment holiday scheme for people whose incomes have been affected by COVID-19. I know that this is an incredibly stressful and uncertain time for New Zealanders, and this government is focused on trying to soften the financial impact on those worst affected. I've been facilitating discussions between New Zealand's main banks, the Treasury and the Reserve Bank on a business financing guarantee scheme for small to medium-sized businesses and help for affected home mortgage holders. I want to deal with the mortgage holiday aspect of the agreement first. Retail banks have agreed to offer a 6-month mortgage repayment holiday to homeowners whose incomes have been affected by COVID-19. This is a similar scheme to that which has been offered in Australia. The specific details of how this will be delivered by each bank are being finalised, and banks will make this public in the coming days. I know that people will be anxious to know the details about how this will affect them. We thought, given that, and given the very high level of interest from the wider public and the media, that it was important we announce this agreement today. But the exact criteria will be defined by banks in the coming days. I ask people not to bombard banks with applications or queries until the banks themselves have released those details, and it will be within the next 1 or 2 days. The Reserve Bank has agreed to help banks with the appropriate capital rules. In addition, it has decided to reduce banks' core funding ratios from 75% to 50%, further helping banks make credit available. The second part of the agreement that I'm announcing today is a $6.25 billion business financing guarantee scheme, where the government underwrites bank loans to small and medium-sized businesses. The scheme leverages the Crown's financial strength, allowing banks to lend to ease the financial stress on solvent firms affected by the COVID-19 pandemic. This scheme will include a limit of $500,000 per loan and would apply to firms with a turnover of between $250,000 and $80 million per annum. We have committed to monitoring this scheme, and we are prepared to evolve this criteria over time if necessary. The loans will be for a maximum of 3 years and will be provided by banks at their transparent and competitive rates. The lending decisions will be made by banks, not the government, as the banks have the existing relationships with their customers and can get the money out the door faster. In order to ensure that the benefits of this scheme reach the businesses we need it to, the government will carry 80% of the credit risk, and the remainder will be carried by banks. Just before we go on to questions, two particular pleas, or one plea and one piece of information, sorry. Firstly, a plea to businesses to continue to pay their bills to one another. It is very important that businesses who are in a position to do so continue to pay other businesses, particularly larger businesses paying smaller businesses. This ensures money continues to flow around the economy and ensure that businesses can remain solvent. And a piece of information about the wage subsidy scheme. As of this morning, there have been 117,273 applications, with 41,505 been approved and $687 million paid out. And obviously, these numbers move every single moment.
First, I want to start by sharing some positive news. One of the questions I've been asked most frequently as we've been announcing new cases of COVID-19 in New Zealand has been how many have recovered. Now, for some, COVID-19 will be an illness they experience for a time, but we do have an official protocol around declaring individuals to have fully recovered, and we will start reporting on that. So I can now tell you that of the New Zealanders who have been diagnosed with COVID-19, 12 have now fully recovered. I expect obviously that number to continue to increase. As you know, the majority of people who contract COVID-19 do obviously recover, and it is essential to the success of our response that as many people as possible are able to recover at home if they are able, in order to make sure we leave our hospitals for those experiencing the worst effects. For those interested, the latest number of individuals who are currently requiring hospital care, I understand, is 6, but that none of those require the treatment provided through ICU or through our high dependency units. Now, let me run through a few updates on the government's preparations as we move to the unprecedented position of being in alert level 4 and as we seek to stop the spread of COVID-19 in New Zealand. The first statement I'd make is that the underlying principle for alert level 4 is to reduce down contact between people to the bare minimum, essential services contact only. That means the simplest thing New Zealanders can do to stop the spread of this virus is to stay at home. That's how we will save lives. Isolation and physical distancing from other people is key to our response at this level. Now, of course, some New Zealanders will still be needed to operate our essential services, those who provide the necessities of life, such as our frontline health workers and police being obvious examples. And to these people, every one of us owes a debt of gratitude. And I can tell you that we can repay that debt of gratitude now by staying at home. Every interaction we have with someone else increases the risk of the spread of the virus. And you can see that, for instance, in the spread of some of our cases. You'll see a cluster of cases have come from one conference, and that gives you a little bit of an insight into why we are trying to share that message so strongly. Reduce contact, reduce risk, reduce the spread. If you are not an essential worker but you try to go to work or you carry on as usual, you are literally putting at risk those who have to be there, like our hospital workers. Now, I know there continue to be questions, and they are understandable. Countries are facing them the world over as we move into this never-before-seen status in New Zealand of essentially shutting down normal life. But we are making good progress, and we do have time to work through some of the questions that remain. But I'll start with a few common ones first. People have asked if they can leave their house to go for a walk. Yes, but again, we ask people to stay 2 metres away from anyone you pass. Do not congregate. It comes down again to those very simple principles. If you are completely isolated, if you live alone, but you have one person you have contact with, it needs to be just that, a person you stay faithful to and they stay faithful to you in turn. If you have multiple contacts with others, that is where the risk increases, and we cannot afford that. It ruins the entire purpose of Alert Level 4. You can drive locally to go to your supermarket to get food, but again, we ask that you maintain your physical distance, again 2 metres from others who may be undertaking essential errands or getting a bit of fresh air as well. Other than that, we do ask people to stay at home. This is life that will be different. It will not be normal, it will not feel normal, but that is what we have to do to beat the virus. I know there have also been many questions on essential services, and again, we are in self-isolation to limit the chances the virus has to spread. The more businesses that stay open, the more chances it has to spread. Our whole strategy at Level 4 is to eliminate that. I have there seen talk around what constitutes essential services, and the COVID committee is working through some of those key questions, and there'll be further updates again on that tomorrow. Also, we will be ready to be responsive. If once we're at Alert Level 4, we discover that there are essential services that have not been made available, we will be ready to respond and react to that as we go. And I want to assure people of that. But our starting point has to be that we have as many closures as possible to maintain Alert Level 4, but to provide for the essentials of life. We have never shut down our country before. So I will ask people to work with us as we go through this unprecedented step. MB is leading this work and talking to businesses closely around some of the implications for them. But again, first port of call is the COVID-19 website. I do want to reiterate the basic principles we're working to, though. We must make sure we've got those services that enable us to scale up our response to COVID-19. So people who manufacture PPE or who are providing important products for our hospital services. We must ensure the necessities of life for New Zealanders. They have to be able to access pharmaceutical products, food and basic banking services. And we must maintain public health and security. If you're not doing those things, we are asking you to close. As you've already been briefed by the Speaker, Parliament will sit tomorrow. We will debate the epidemic notice and seek to pass a state of emergency, both which provides us the powers for government to move the country to level 4. The epidemic notice was gazetted today and ensures that temporary visas are automatically extended to late September. Travellers with a temporary work, student visa, interim and limited visa expiring before 1 April 2020 who are unable to leave New Zealand will be able to stay legally. Travellers with a temporary visa due to expire between 1 April and 9 July will have their visas extended to late September, and confirmation of these extensions will be emailed to visa holders. Detailed information is available on the Immigration New Zealand website. We'll also be making it available on the COVID-19 website. Anyone in New Zealand who's concerned about their visa, although they should be covered by these measures, should get in touch with Immigration New Zealand. And finally, before I hand over to the Finance Minister, I would reiterate what I said yesterday. This event is unprecedented in New Zealand's history. Never before have we sought to shut down our country in the space of 48 hours, and I want to thank those who have worked so diligently to help support that transition for all New Zealanders. We will, though, take a common sense approach. We'll make sure that people can get home if they're at a ferry terminal, or get a flight if the only way they can get home from Dunedin to Auckland is via air travel. We will work calmly and sensibly through all of those issues as we go. But I simply wasn't willing to wait until we could answer every single question on some of these logistical challenges before we moved to level 4. Every day we waited would have been more time that COVID-19 could spread in our community. So we will work through this as we transition. That is the best way that we can assure the New Zealand public that we are protecting their public health with urgency, and that's exactly what we're doing.